Hello everybody and welcome to another list video. This time going deep on every single character, Spider-Man through Nick Fury, to talk about the card that best represents them out of their kit. So two caveats here is they got to be in the character's kit, and it's not going to be the hero card. The hero cards are generally a pretty good representation of the characters, but to me that's not, I think, a fair thing to go off of, because I think the cards within their kit are generally showing off extensions of what the character can do. I mean, honestly, sometimes the hero card is more just like a representation of, like, this person has a lot of health and they happen to be very strong, which is why they have 0 thwart and 3 attack and 18 health or whatever Hulk has. Let's get into this because this could go very long. There's almost 60 characters to talk about, and I am a talker. So let's get into the core set heroes. Let's talk about Spider-Man, starting off with Enhanced Spider Sense. In my mind, Spider-Man has a lot of good cards in his kit, and a lot of them are pretty fairly examples of what Spider-Man can do. I mean, they're all examples of what Spider-Man can do. In terms of events, you've got like backflip and swinging web kick. He's a talented scientist, so he has the web shooters, and he's also got the spider tracers, and webbed up is also something he can do. But in my mind, Enhanced Spider Sense is very clearly like what Spider-Man is good at, what his superpower kind of is. And if I was to break it down, if you were to ask like just a random person on the street, what kind of superpowers does Spider-Man have, the Spider Sense is going to be pretty quickly on that short list. And that's why, for me, Enhanced Spider Sense is right there. This is represented in the game by allowing you to, when a treachery card is revealed from the encounter deck, you cancel it. You cancel its when revealed effects. So for the most part, this is, aside from the surge that could be there, you are pretty much using your Spider Sense to blank a treachery, which is really good. It is actually, wait, let me just check that. Okay, yeah, Shadow of the Past is a treachery. I wasn't sure. I didn't think it was an obligation, but I didn't want to speak incorrectly on a card that is sitting literally feet from me that I can check on. But yeah, I think this is a really good representation of what Spider-Man is. He has his Spider Sense. It's just very clearly in my mind exactly what you would look at Spider-Man for. Next up, we have Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, and this one was a little bit difficult only because I feel like a lot of her cards are, I think that it's a close tie with a lot of them, like Cosmic Flight and Photon Blast, and even like her resource energy absorption. Like, they're all indicative of what she does, but I think that overall the one that really kind of spoke to me the most is Energy Channel. And I would even say that some of this might come down to the fact that because Carol Danvers is so, as a card, as a hero, is so focused on the energy resources, I feel like we get Cosmic Flight, so obviously we have a representation that she gains aerial, that she can fly through space. But we don't really get any indication of just how, like, durable she is, how powerful she is. Like, even she only has an attack for 2. And that might be a early representation of she was a core set hero. They hadn't really gotten all the dials figured out. I think that if she had been a 2-3-1 statted hero, she might have been too good. Although at that point, like, she still does have like the average of 6 balance. So, you know, we're kind of splitting hairs here. But I do think that just Energy Channel as a upgrade that sits in play, it's one of the I don't want to say there's not a lot of upgrades, because there probably are, but I think most of the time it's easy to kind of look at a hero and kind of find an event that represents them. But like I said, Energy Channel, for anyone who's not watching the video very closely, is a upgrade with max 1 per player. Action, spend X energy resources, put X energy counters on this card. And as a hero action, you can discard Energy Channel, do 2 damage to an enemy, maximum of 10 for each energy counter here. So you can basically, for 0, drop this and then drop up to 5 energy resources, or spend up to 5 energy resources to then deal 10 damage at a later turn. We see this again with Bishop. I don't necessarily know that I will say the same thing about Bishop. The card it's not clear to me if this is the exact same thing, but overall, I think that just Carol being able to absorb a bunch of energy and just unleash, unleash the Nova Force, unleash a massive attack is very indicative of what she's capable of doing. And like I said, I think it's very closely tied to what she as a hero does. Next up, we've got Iron Man, and it's kind of funny here because he is just a man in a suit, which is why I think that his suit, the Mark V armor, is maybe as a card text, not fully indicative of Iron Man, but unfortunately, like in terms of like card text, you'd almost have to say that every piece, like every tech armor piece he has, is kind of part of that. And I think that if you're going to sum up everything, the Mark V armor is maybe the one that is closest to representing what he is. Here, it's a 3-cost upgrade that gives him +6 hit points, which I believe takes him up pretty high. What is his hit points again? Hit points are 9. So yeah, that gets him up to 15, which 15 is pretty respectable. In fact, it's very respectable. But the thing is, like something like a repulsor blast or a supersonic punch is dependent on him actually having the armor. Like Tony Stark, in terms of a character, is the armor. And I think that to look at it any other way would not be properly taking it into consideration. And so for me, I'm going to say that the armor, the arc reactor is probably another good pick. You know what? I'm going to flip this because the Mark V armor is just an armor he has. The arc reactor, I think at some point in the comics, he kind of becomes, he no longer is dependent on it. But actually, now that I stop to think about it, the arc reactor is Iron Man. Like that is the power source for the armor. It's the power source for all of his tech. And like I said, at some point in the comics that changes. But yeah, I looked at this incorrectly. I didn't think about that. The arc reactor is totally Iron Man. And just for anyone who's kind of unaware, it is a 2-cost upgrade, item tech, exhaust, arc reactor, ready Iron Man. That's its use in the game. But I think that in terms of like just what it does for him as a comic book character, I think that is actually, that is Iron Man. So let me just change that on my list here, my Google note. Arc reactor. Okay. Moving on to Black Panther. And I would love to say that Wakanda Forever is the answer here. And I just think that that's not really a superpower. That's more just like a saying. And I'm going to land on Vibranium Armor, which within the game is a 2-cost upgrade, armor Black Panther traded, and a special ability of attack. Move 1 damage from your hero to an enemy, 2 damage instead if this is the final step of the sequence. Play the Wakanda Forever event to use this ability. I think that just in terms of like what T'Challa is capable of, if there was a card for the heart-shaped herb, which let me just make sure that there's not. No, that's a treachery. Okay, I knew there was a card called heart-shaped herb, but the heart-shaped herb might be the real source of his superpowers if you were to really kind of like go out all the way, and if that was included. But for me, the armor is what makes the Black Panther. Like that is what is carried down from generation to generation. The armor is not what makes the hero, but the armor is kind of what signifies the ruler of Wakanda, is the warrior of Wakanda. Like the armor is that status symbol of the Black Panther itself, the mantle. Yeah, I suppose it's exactly the mantle. All right, then let's move on to She-Hulk. This one was another one that I would say was a little bit hard because I feel like a lot of her cards are kind of similar to a Carol Danvers, kind of take up like reasonable percentages. Like this is 20%, this is kind of 20% of her power. Not that this is a math game, but I ended up going with Gamma Slam, which within our game is a 2-cost event, attack superpower. Hero action, deal X damage to an enemy to a maximum of 15. X is the amount of damage you have sustained. Yeah, this just felt like the most appropriate card to really signify what makes Jennifer She-Hulk, and that is just her immense power, her ability to just, do the Gamma Slam. And I would love to point to something like Legal Practice or her Superhuman Law Division, because that does acknowledge her expertise in the court, but I feel like in terms of like a superpower, like just being a good lawyer, like, you know, I mean, Matt Murdock's a good lawyer, and yet we still know him as Daredevil. She-Hulk is a great lawyer, but I feel like in my bones that Gamma Slam is that Hulk part of her that really, it just shows off what she's capable of doing. Moving out of the core set and into the first wave of heroes, we have Captain America. And this one seemed pretty easy for me. I landed on Shield Toss because I felt like that was, when I think of Captain America, I think of him throwing his shield, having it bounce around, and just like that perfect, like it always bounces around, hits everything, and then comes back to him like a boomerang, like a giant circular boomerang. And yeah, this is kind of the low-hanging fruit. In our game, Shield Toss is a zero-cost event, attack superpower. Hero action, discard X cards from your hand, then return Captain America's shield from play to your hand, deal 4 damage to X enemies. And yeah, even just in terms of what it does as a card, that just feels like what happens in the comics, where Steve just throws his shield, it bounces off a couple walls, it hits a few Hydra soldiers or members of the Masters of Evil, and then just like returns back to him, and he's ready to just sort of like be impenetrable, be, you know, the guy who can do this all day. And yeah, I just I don't think there's much more to say about Captain America. Next up, we have Kamala Khan, aka Miss Marvel. And this one was kind of hard because I feel like it could have gone in one of two ways. And I don't want to have ties here, so I'm not going to do that. But I do think that Shrink and Embiggen are kind of the two sides of the coin in terms of what she's capable of doing. But I'm going to go with Embiggen just because while I do think that she can use shrinking down to do, you know, like really good espionage and like sneak into places you're not supposed to be in. When I think of Miss Marvel, I think of somebody who just gets big, has the big hands, smashes people, and yeah, Embiggen just became what I think is, one, it's kind of like one of her catchphrases, but yeah, I just think is a very good representation of what Kamala Khan is capable of. That said, I think that it's also entirely possible that you could have looked at her events like Big Hands and Sneak By to really show off what she's capable of. In those cases, Big Hands is just an attack event that deals 4 damage. Sneak By is just a thwart event that removes 3 threat. But oh yeah, I didn't even read off what the card does. So Embiggen is a hero interrupt. When you play an attack event, you may exhaust Embiggen, and the amount of damage that event deals is increased by 2. That's one of my favorite cards in the kit. Not my favorite card, but definitely I love being able to take a attack event that it was balanced for its costs and everything, and really just kind of make it even bigger. And this does then kind of like split off into having events that deal multiple instances of damage, and suddenly everything deals a bunch of damage. And yeah, just overall, I love Embiggen, and I think that it is a good representation of what Kamala is capable of. Next up, we have Thor, and this one seemed pretty easy. I think there could be a case made for putting Mjolnir on the list because that's kind of like the source of his power, but that kind of like I feel like doesn't fully encapsulate what Thor's known for. Obviously, it does give him aerial, which I feel like we don't get to kind of like see the full extent of it. Like I wish that there was a event where you had to exhaust Mjolnir to like basically engage a bunch of minions, like a bunch of enemies, so that you could basically draw a bunch of cards, although that doesn't work like that because that's not how his ability works. But either way, I wish that there was a way that you could basically use his hammer to like throw him in a direction. But that brings me to the actual card, which is Hammer Throw. In our game, it is a 3-cost event, attack superpower, hero action, exhaust Mjolnir, deal 8 damage to an enemy, and return Mjolnir to your hand. This attack gains overkill. So very similar to how Shield Toss is very much what Captain America does. He throws it around, it bounces off people. Thor is very much like throw his hammer at somebody, knock them out, and just have it return back to your hand. Which, yeah, overall, this card pretty much covers all of that. You exhaust your hammer, which I think is just a balancing mechanism. Then having it return to your hand is very thematic. very similar to how the shield returns to your hand. But yeah, I think this is just like a perfect representation of what Thor is known for. Just throw that hammer, have it return to your hand, and deal a bunch of damage. Then we get to Black Widow, who I feel like was actually a lot harder to pin down than I was expecting, because I think that some of it comes down to the fact that like she's so preparation heavy, and that does feel like her thing, where she's always ready. She's always got a gadget that's going to get her out of a situation, whether that's a grappling hook or her widow's bite is a preparation. She's also a spy, so covert ops works. But in my mind, I do feel like all those things are just sort of like added things to what Natasha's capable of doing. And really, like, the card that represents her is Dance of Death. Just being able to deal all this damage across several different bodies. In our game is a 3-cost event: attack, hero action, make the following 3 attacks in order: deal 1 damage to an enemy, deal 2 damage to an enemy, deal 3 damage to an enemy. Deal 6, if you have some kind of way to bump that up, deal even more. But yeah, just overall, while all 3 preparations are good representations of what she's able to do when she has all of her gadgets and gizmos, I do think that she is just because of the Red Room, a formidable force that allows her to just sort of like, do this Dance of Death and to deal a bunch of damage and to be a legitimate threat. And that's why that is the card that I think represents Black Widow the best. Moving on to Doctor Strange. This one was hard because he has so many cards, and so many of them feel like they are, in one form or another, a representation of what Doctor Strange is capable of doing. But then I realized that we have a card that's literally called Master of the Mystic Arts, which I was surprised to realize was an event, because it feels like it should be a title. But I suppose Sorcerer Supreme is already a card. If we could go outside of the kit, that would probably be one of the cards I would pick. That, and I suppose I think at some point Magic becomes the Sorcerer Supreme of Limbo. That's distracting us from the real event, Masters of the Mystic Art, which is a 1-cost event. Hero action: pay the printed cost of the top card of the invocation deck, resolve its special ability, then place it back on top of the invocation deck face up. So this is just a nice way to take what Doctor Strange is already doing and do it again. I think it is just a good way of summing up who he is in the Marvel Universe. He is the Master of Mystic Arts, and we've got a card that literally has that name on it. And I think that this also does a good job of showing just how proficient he is. Like, he has his invocation deck. Normally, the rules around it work one way, but the Masters of the Mystic Arts allow him to go a step beyond that. And like I said, just be a badass in that way. And rounding out the first wave of our Marvel heroes, we land with the Hulk. And I don't think there was any card other than Hulk Smash that was going to be making this list. There are a lot of cards that they do a very good job of representing all these characters. They do a very good job of representing the Hulk. I think he's got the one, what's it called, where it's like the thunderclap or whatever. Like, it is literally called Thunderclap. Okay, so I had that right. But yeah, Hulk Smash, 3-cost event, superpower. When you make a basic attack, you get plus 10 attack for that attack. If you paid using only physical resources, this attack gains overkill. This is, in its name, in its effect, exactly what the Hulk is. He is just a character who's going to come in and he's going to smash. And I think that is just great and fully encapsulates exactly what the Hulk is. And I think the other great thing about this is this also represents your entire turn. I mean, obviously you could have resource generators, but the fact that you have a 4-hand size, you have to pay 3 cards plus this one, so you're using up 4 cards to make this massive attack that should be very potent. The overkill is very, very relevant, because in some ways it does feel like a little bit of overkill. 13 damage naturally is a lot of damage, and it feels like a little bit of overkill. But if you have the ability to do that, go through a minion, especially if you can do it through a guard minion, and just like lay down the smack, get in a good attack, and be back to relaxing before the next wave. yeah, this is just a cool card, and I think that it is entirely indicative of who the Hulk is as a character. Moving into the Rise of Red Skull and Wave 2, we have right off the bat Spider-Woman, and I'll be honest, this one was hard because I do feel like this might be the closest we've gotten thus far to so many of the cards are good examples of what she's capable of doing. And I feel like just in terms of Spider-Woman, one, it's an interesting gimmick to have a bunch of aspect cards in her kit that count as both that aspect card and work outside of that. They're both in her kit, and they're also a leadership card. They're in her kit, and they're a protection card. But I feel like Venom Blast might be the one that just feels like this is her. It's entirely possible that her leadership card, which I'm going to botch what it's called. Oh, sorry, is that pheromone? Is that how pheromones is spelled? I'm so dumb. So yeah, pheromones is very indicative of what she's capable of doing. And I think that is a strong second. But yeah, in my mind, Venom Blast is the card. This is a 2-cost event, attack superpower, hero action, deal 5 damage to an enemy. Pretty good attack event. Not the best, but pretty good attack event. And just in terms of what she's capable of doing, the Venom Blast is a thing that I know her for. Like I said, pheromones, also very close second. Just to make sure everyone's aware of it, is a 2-cost event. Superpower, stun and confuse an enemy. That seems very indicative of what she's capable of doing. But yeah, overall, I just think the Venom Blast is what she's kind of known for. It's one of her superpowers. And like I said, this is actually really hard. I think this is maybe the hero that has the most cards that just feel like they encapsulate the hero really, really well. But let's move on to Hawkeye, who I think is much easier. For all of his excellent cards, they're mostly all arrows, which I don't think that one arrow is more iconic than another. I think that just the idea of him being an expert marksman as a skill, I think, is his biggest claim to fame. In the game, it is a 1-cost upgrade skill, and it is a with a resource, exhaust expert marksman, generate a wild resource for an arrow event. Not only is this just a good way of representing his really good accuracy, but also it is right there with the fact that it ties into his arrow mechanic. Another thing that, with Shield giving us so many new preparations out of the Nick Fury box, or out of the Nick Fury deck, to enhance what you're trying to do with preparations. I do wish there was more arrow events. That'd be really cool. But that might not be in the cards. Either way, yeah, just expert marksman, just a title and a skill that really represents Hawkeye, but then also playing into the theme of his deck, I think is a perfect encapsulation of who Clint Barton is and what he's capable of doing. But let's move forward and let's look at Scott Lang. So Ant-Man was actually a hard hero for me to really kind of pin down, because I wanted to put it under Army of Ants. I wanted to put it onto Pym Particles because that's the source of his power. But then that kind of felt like Mjolnir. And I eventually landed on Ant-Man's helmet, because I do think that in terms of his powers and what he's capable of doing, it is a really good encapsulation of that. It is kind of playing off of everything. It's what allows him in the comics to sort of be the hero that he is. And in the game, it is a 3-cost upgrade, armor tech, with the hero responsive. After you change to giant form, heal 2 damage from your hero, and another hero responsive after you change to tiny hero form, draw a card. And even in the game, I would say that while it's not as crucial to what he's actually trying to do, because you can still use the Army of Ants, you can still use your giant strength, what have you, I think that just it becomes a very key piece to what he's trying to do. I would even say that Resize is a card that you may want to consider as the key to his power, because he can get big, he can get small. But I think that at the core of it, his actual powers, his ability to be a hero, is tied so much to his helmet that I feel like in a sea of close ties, Ant-Man's helmet just kind of rules over all of them, and in my mind is the representation of the hero that we have in our game. Next up we have Wasp, aka Janet Van Dyne, and this is another one where I mean, it could be as simple as pin particles, and it could be as simple as Wasp's helmet. But I actually think that just in terms of actual superpowers, actual what she's doing, what she's capable of, I picked Pinpoint Strike, which is a event in our game, 3-cost event, attack, hero action, deal 7 damage to an enemy. If you are in tiny form, this attack deals 1 additional damage to that enemy and gains overkill. Super thematic, super powerful attack, cares about what form you're in. And I think one of the things that gets overlooked about the Wasp is that she is a hero that almost you want to just tailor what you're doing to a particular size, whether you're going to be in giant form or tiny form. You can obviously, build a flex deck that can do either, but sometimes the best way to build Wasp is to consider what form you're going to be in. And Pinpoint Strike, for a character named Wasp, who's supposed to be tiny, like obviously she can get big. She gets big all the time, just like Ant-Man. It's kind of contradictory, but I think that just as a very tiny thing who can just punch with the strength of a 5'6" woman when she's 2 inches tall or whatever, or maybe even smaller than that. Maybe she's like a millimeter tall. I don't remember. I don't remember how small they get, but yeah, just that Pinpoint Strike felt like Wasp to me. Next up, we have Quicksilver, who is a character that I'll be excited to talk about when I finally do a new player guide, because I feel like there's a lot of baggage with this character and I feel like there's a lot to go over. But if I were to sit there and pick a card that I feel like is most representative of who Quicksilver is as a character, I feel like Always Be Running is the simple answer. As a card, it is a 1-cost event, superpower, hero action, ready Quicksilver. And for anyone who doesn't know what his hero card does, basically after he uses a basic power, you ready him up, and that's limited to once per phase. Yes, once per phase. And so readying up, always being able to basically like make twice the amount of actions is just something that we see constantly. And I think that Always Be Running is not only kind of just his motto, but also just shows off just how much he's always prepared. Like even when you think that he's exhausted, he's just going to ready back up. He's going to go do something. And I think that it's also a fun gag on the fact that I think his obligation, let me just make sure his obligation is, standing behind a woman at a grocery store, like watching the world be so slow when you are the fastest man alive. I think that's kind of up for debate because we have other characters that are pretty fast in the Marvel universe. But yeah, just overall, I would say that Always Be Running is the representation of Quicksilver in the game. I think is maybe the clearest representation of how he works. Next up, we have Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch, and this was another one that I really wanted to just go with Hexbolt because I felt like that was the simple answer, even chaos magic to some degree. But in the end, I realized that warp reality is maybe the upper echelon of what she's capable of doing. And I think that everything else she does is because she is so good at bending probability. Like that's her power, is to bend probability. But she bends it to such a degree that she can warp reality. And in fact, when I was in college, I was entertaining the idea of like creating a comic book. And the basic rundown was like me and my friends all discovered that we had superpowers. It was the era of heroes. That's just what it was. Then it was a mix between Lost and Heroes to some degree. It would have been the long-term plans. And before I'd really like dove into Scarlet Witch as a character, one of my friends just said, like, your power should be that you're always like extremely lucky, extremely fortunate. Things always kind of just work out for you. And I wanted to run with that idea. And then suddenly I began to realize just like how insignificant an event such as like I got the last muffin in the cafeteria to trigger that kind of thing to have happened, when you take it to its logical conclusion, means that like reality itself bent around me so that eventually I would be the last person to pick up a muffin or a cookie or milk or whatever, or I didn't pick up the expired milk or something. And suddenly the cascading events became such that I mean, that could have been an entire issue of a comic. It's just me getting that muffin, and like the guy whose tire had to blow so that another student got like delayed and they didn't make it to the campus on time, and suddenly they were going to be the one that would have grabbed it. But that also like, but he was also behind that car. Like, this could go on and on and on. Like, he was behind the car because his sister took a shower before him, where he missed his alarm and he was running late, and so that's why he like, it goes on and on and on, and then like it never stops. And that's, once I began to understand Scarlet Witch, I began to understand just how much like her ability to bend probability is reality warping. And I haven't even gotten to the card. Oh my gosh, I've gone on this tangent. I'm so sorry. Her card is a 1-cost event, spell, superpower, hero interrupt. When an encounter card is revealed from the encounter deck, cancel its effects and discard it. Discard cards from the top of the encounter deck equal to the number of boost icons on that card. I would even say that what this card does, and it says no to the encounter deck, and it has rippling effects just like everything that Wanda does. But I think just in terms of, as a name, warp reality, that is what Wanda does. Like, that's just her superpower. And everything else under it is just sort of like a category of her warping reality. Her ability to do these hex bolts, her ability to deal a bunch of damage with molecular decay, the chaos magic, it's all just built around her ability to warp reality. And that gets us through the second wave. And actually, we have run on so long, and we've gone through 2 waves. So I realize now that this is going to be a series. I will do 2 waves at a time, and I will go through all of these, and I will try to release them in a little bit of a rapid succession. But yeah, thank you for joining me today. I don't really want to make a 2-hour video, and this could easily be a 3-hour video. So I will catch you all next time when we are going to be talking about the Guardians wave and the Mad Titan Shadow wave. And thank you for your time, and have a great day.